The first time it spoke, I thought I was
What do you
hallucinating.
see when you look at
The wind
me?
outside the dome had been howling for hours, carrying dust so fine it whispered across the habitat walls like dry hands scratching for entry. My tools hummed quietly in the low Martian gravity, a steady, comforting noise in the sterile hum of isolation. Everything about the moment felt normal until it opened its mouth. Human, it said, voice deep and deliberate, vibrating through the thin air. You should prepare. We're having puppies. The wrench slipped from my hand, clattering against the floor of the habitat. The sound echoed, too loud in the stillness. For several seconds, I could only stare at it, at him, the creature crouched near the far wall, tail coiled around his legs like a serpent. Excuse me? I finally managed, half a laugh, half disbelief. The being I'd come to call Ro tilted his head, 4 golden eyes blinking slowly. Prepare, he repeated with unsettling calm, for the birthing. The cycle has begun. I blinked again, trying to process the fact that not only had he just spoken, but that he'd done so in perfect English. For weeks, I had catalogued his growls and gestures, noting patterns, frequency, emotional associations. Never once had he spoken. Wait, I said slowly, taking a careful step closer. You just talked. Yes, he replied, as if that were the least surprising thing in the universe. You understand? Understand? I barked out a shaky laugh. I understand about 5% of what's happening right now. Ro rose to his full height and even crouched slightly under the low ceiling. He was massive, twice the size of a wolf, sleek and muscled. His fur shimmered faintly like oil under light. The first time I found him, half dead in the wreckage of an alien structure, I thought he was some kind of wild predator. But there had been intelligence in his eyes even then. You helped me heal, he said now, that resonant tone thrumming through my bones. You sealed the wounds, restored the energy flow, and activated the dormant seed core. The ritual is complete. Ritual? I repeated, taking another step back. That was called first aid, buddy. Not a ritual, he blinked, slow and deliberate. You shared blood. My stomach dropped. I what? He pointed one massive claw at my left wrist, where a thin scar was visible through my sleeve. I'd cut my hand 2 months ago while cleaning his injuries. The wound had been small, a stupid accident, but I remembered the way his glowing saliva had sealed it afterward. That's not how biology works, I said weakly. Ro's tail lashed once, the tip glowing faintly. It is how life works. The joining has bound our cycles. You will aid the gestation. I rubbed my temples. Gestation. You're telling me you're pregnant. He gave a low, vibrating sound that I realized was his version of a chuckle. We are pregnant, I almost choked. No, hold up. There's no we in this situation. I'm a scientist, not a whatever passes for your mate. The creature simply sat unbothered, his golden eyes watching me with the kind of patience reserved for predators and ancient gods. The process has begun. You will feel it soon. I'll feel what soon. Connection, the word hung in the air like static. For a long time I just stood there, trying to find the rational explanation. The atmosphere on Mars could play tricks on your mind, I knew that. Isolation could cause auditory hallucinations. Maybe I'd gone stir-crazy. Maybe the lack of sleep was finally catching up to me. But Ro didn't look like a hallucination. He looked too real, too present, and then I noticed it, a faint rhythmic pulse of light beneath his translucent skin. Not just at his chest, but along his sides, down his spine, radiating outward in symmetrical patterns. I'd seen similar energy signatures before in the alien ruins, machines waking up after eons of dormancy. Ro, I said quietly, what is that light? He tilted his head. Life beginning. The first spark of the litter. I swallowed hard. You're serious? He blinked, and for the first time there was something softer, almost warm in his expression. I am never otherwise. My throat felt dry. And you're saying I... What exactly? Contributed to this somehow? You are part of the genetic anchor, he said matter-of-factly. The seed core required a catalyst, and your healing provided it. Your structure merged with mine. Together, we create stability for the young. Great, I muttered, pacing now. So I'm what, some kind of space midwife? He didn't answer immediately. Instead, his ears twitched and he turned toward the habitat wall, nose lifting slightly. "What is it?" I asked. "The wind," he murmured. "It carries memory." I frowned. "Row!" Then faintly, beneath the hum of the filters and machines, I heard it too. A long, distant howl, carried across the barren Martian plains. It wasn't the wind. It was something alive. What the hell was that? I whispered, his voice lowered, almost reverent. "They have heard!" "They come. Who?" I asked, already knowing I wasn't going to like the answer. "The pack," he said simply. "They will smell the bond. They will seek the offspring." I took a slow, unsteady breath. "And that's bad, I'm guessing?" Ro turned to face me fully, his golden eyes burning like twin suns. "They will kill you, human, and claim what is mine." That single word, mine, made my blood run cold. The habitat's lights flickered for just a second. A small power fluctuation, nothing unusual on Mars, but something about it felt different this time, deliberate. I forced a shaky laugh. "Okay, that's enough." "You're joking." "You have to be." "I do not joke," Ro said. "Your species mistakes fear for humor." I pressed my hands against my face, pacing again. "This is crazy. I didn't sign up for this. I came here to study soil, not interplanetary dog pregnancies." He tilted his head. "You misunderstand. You did not choose this. The bond chose you." My heart was still pounding, but my mind, my rational, scientific mind, was starting to fight back. "All right," I said, forcing my voice steady. "Say I believe you for a second. What exactly happens next?" "Preparation," he said simply. "Protection. The litter must be born in safety. And where exactly am I supposed to find safety on a dead planet?" Ro's eyes flicked toward the dome's ceiling. "Not here. You mean leave?" "I can't leave. There's a storm coming in. They are already within it," he interrupted softly. The words hit me like a blow. I turned toward the observation window. Beyond it, the red horizon was darkening. Not from sunset, but from clouds of dust swirling violently across the plains. Lightning flashed within the storm, illuminating shapes that didn't belong. Massive, four-legged silhouettes moved with deliberate purpose, their bodies glowing faintly in the shifting light. My throat went dry. "Ro," I whispered, "tell me those are not what I think they are." He rose slowly, his muscles rippling under his bioluminescent hide. "You must prepare, human," he said again, his voice deeper now, almost a growl. "They come for what is ours." The storm hit the habitat a second later, a sound like the planet itself tearing apart. The walls groaned, dust hammering against the dome. The power flickered again, this time longer. Ro's eyes glowed brighter in the dim light. "If you wish to live," he said, "you must fight beside me." "Fight?" I stammered. "I don't even know what's happening." "Then learn quickly." The creature's form shimmered, his fur bristling with light. Energy arced from his body in faint, pulsing veins that spread across the floor, connecting to the walls, the machines, everything around him. The habitat system surged back to life, lights blazing. "What are you doing?" I asked, shielding the nest. "The what nest?" He looked at me over his shoulder, his eyes burning with an otherworldly glow. "You stand within it, human. The offspring's first home," and as he spoke, a strange sensation crawled up my arm, like a pulse of warmth beneath the skin. I looked down and saw faint golden lines glowing where my veins should be. I stumbled backward, panic rising. "Ro, what the hell is happening to me?" He stepped closer, the sound of his paws heavy against the metal floor. "The bond deepens," he said softly. "The young feel you now. You are part of them." The storm outside roared louder, the sky flashing with alien lightning. Shadows moved within it, huge, fast, closing in. I pressed a hand against the window, staring out into the crimson haze. "How many of them are there?" "Enough to erase us," Rose said quietly, "unless we remind them what we are capable of." I turned toward him slowly. "And what exactly are you capable of?" His eyes met mine. "You will see soon." Before I could ask another question, a sound like thunder cracked across the desert, and the first silhouette broke through the storm, massive. "Glowing and far too intelligent," Ro growled low in his chest. "They've come to claim my blood," he said, "and they will have to tear you apart to take it." Outside, lightning illuminated the pack closing in. Inside, my heart pounded so hard it drowned out the storm. And then, as the power flickered one last time, I heard something new, a faint hum deep beneath the floor, the same rhythm pulsing under Rose's skin. I didn't know it then, but the birthing had already begun. The howl outside didn't fade, it multiplied. A second voice joined the first, lower and rougher, followed by another that rose in a shrill, almost metallic echo. Within seconds, the Martian silence I'd grown used to was gone, replaced by a haunting chorus that made the walls of the habitat hum. The sound wasn't just through the air, it came through the ground, vibrating through my boots, rattling tools on the shelves. Rose's head snapped toward the sound. His tail lashed once, and his ears flattened against his skull. "They are here sooner than I expected." My throat tightened. "The pack," I said slowly. He didn't answer, but I didn't need him to. The look in his four glowing eyes told me everything. I turned toward the main console. My hands moved automatically, flicking through diagnostic panels, checking atmospheric readings and seismic scans. Every alarm was screaming in bright red, overlapping in a storm of warnings. The outer perimeter sensors were lighting up in patterns that didn't make sense, shapes forming and vanishing as if the creatures were weaving in and out of visibility. "They're fast," I muttered, watching the data feed spike. "Too fast." Rose's voice was a low growl. "They ride the magnetic wind. The storm carries their essence. When they hunt, the planet itself hides them." "Magnetic wind," I repeated, shaking my head. "That's not possible. Mars doesn't have a magnetic field strong enough to—" "Not the planet's," Ro interrupted. "Theirs." Outside, a flash of light streaked across the red dust storm, white, blue, and unnatural. I instinctively ducked, though I knew the habitat's reinforced shell could withstand much worse. Still, the sound of static crackled through the air, making the fine hairs on my arms stand upright. Ro moved closer to the window, his muscles tense. The bioluminescent patterns across his body flickered in sync with the lightning outside, almost like a second heartbeat. "Ro," I said, trying to steady my breathing. "You said they're coming for the offspring, but why? If they're the same species, they are not the same," he cut in sharply. "They are shadows of what we once were, hunters who abandoned the bond. They smell the life we've made and call it heresy." "Life you've made," I corrected automatically, though my voice trembled. He glanced back at me. "No, you are bound now. They can sense you too," I froze. "What do you mean, sense me?" "Your pulse," he said. "Your breath. You carry the spark now. The connection flows both ways. They will want to kill you as much as they want the young." I swallowed hard. My mind spun through possible defenses. Seal the habitat, trigger the EM shield, power the rover. But every option seemed absurd against something that could apparently control the wind. The alarms blared louder. A red light flashed across the ceiling, followed by a sharp tone from the external sensors. "Impact," the console announced in its emotionless, synthetic voice. The ground shuddered. Dust cascaded from the upper vents. The tremor was heavy, deliberate, not random like seismic activity. I rushed to the external cameras. The feed crackled with static, the image grainy and distorted by the storm, but I could still make out shapes. 3 of them, moving through the haze, each one taller than the habitat dome. Their bodies glowed faintly, sinewy, long-limbed, their movements disturbingly fluid. For brief moments, their silhouettes looked almost canine, until the light shifted and they became something else entirely. Something upright. "Something aware." "Ro," I said, my voice barely a whisper. "What are they?" He didn't answer right away. When he finally spoke, his voice had dropped into something deeper, more ancient. "They were guardians once, like me. But when the stars fell silent, they turned feral. They learned to feed on life instead of protecting it." I stared at the monitors. "And they're here because they can smell new life." "Yes," Rose said quietly. "They will try to reclaim it." Outside, one of the creatures lifted its head. Its 4 glowing eyes stared straight toward the camera. Then one by one, the other 2 turned in the same direction, They see us, I breathed. The next second, all three lunged forward. The feed went black. A deafening crash tore through the habitat, sending me sprawling across the floor. The metal shell groaned, the supports shrieking under pressure. The lights flickered wildly before stabilizing, dimmer than before. Rose snarled, lowering himself, every muscle coiled to strike. They test the walls. It will not hold long. I stumbled to my feet, clutching the edge of the workbench. We can't stay here. We'll suffocate if they puncture the dome. He turned his head slightly, eyes gleaming. You would abandon the nest. I'm not abandoning anything, I snapped. But if we stay, there won't be anything left to protect. For a moment, Ro didn't move. Then slowly he nodded. You are right. The young will not survive if we die here. Another impact slammed into the wall. A long, jagged crack spread across the inner panel. Through it, I could hear a faint, rhythmic clicking like claws on metal. Ro turned toward the back of the habitat. The lower chambers, he said. The tunnels below the structure, can they still sustain life? The maintenance tunnels, I asked. They were part of the old base. No one's used them in decades, but they're pressurized. It might work. Then we go there. I didn't need convincing. I grabbed the emergency case, slung it over my shoulder, and ran for the hatch leading downward. Ro followed close behind, his glowing form lighting the dark corridor as the sounds outside grew louder. Something scraped across the dome, metal bending, tearing. I risked one glance back and saw a black shape sliding along the wall, like liquid shadow. 4 glowing eyes blinked at me through the storm before disappearing again. We reached the lower level just as the first panel of the habitat gave way. The sound was sharp and final, followed by the hiss of air escaping. Ro shoved me through the access tunnel and sealed the hatch behind us. The airlock whined, pressure stabilizing. For a brief moment, everything went silent. I leaned against the wall, gasping. What happens now? Ro's golden eyes glowed faintly in the dark. They will search. But they cannot sense the young if we are far enough below. The tunnel stretched out before us, narrow and claustrophobic, carved from red rock and reinforced with corroded steel. The air smelled of rust and dust. I switched on the headlamp from my suit, its beam cutting through the gloom. We walked in silence for several minutes, the only sound the faint hum of the ventilation system. Every now and then, the ground above vibrated slightly, like distant footsteps. Ro walked beside me, his breathing steady. His presence should have been terrifying. He was an alien apex predator after all, but in that moment, he felt like the only thing keeping me sane. Finally, I broke the silence. How long have you been here, Ro? On this planet, since before your kind arrived, he said. Before Mars lost its breath. You mean before the atmosphere collapsed? Yes. His tone was calm, but there was something buried beneath it, an ache. We were the last guardians of the seed cores. When the planet died, we went into hibernation. Most never woke, and you did. He gave a soft growl that might have been laughter. Because you disturbed my rest. I almost smiled despite everything. You're welcome. You should not have, he said simply. Now you share my burden. We walked further until the tunnel widened into a large chamber. Ancient machinery lined the walls, rusted pumps, long dead lights, fossilized control panels. In the center was an old hydroponic bay, its glass cracked, but still intact. The faint hum of dormant systems echoed through the space. This will do, Ro said, stepping into the chamber. The birth can happen here. I stared at him, horrified. You're saying it's now? He met my eyes. Soon, the cycle accelerates when danger is near. Life pushes against death. I set the emergency case down and ran a hand through my hair. Okay. Just tell me what I'm supposed to do. Protect, he said. And when the time comes, do not be afraid of what you see. What does that mean? Before he could answer, the ceiling above us shook violently. Dust rained down. The faint sound of metal tearing echoed through the tunnel. They've found the entrance, I said. Ro moved toward the base of the tunnel, his body shimmering brighter. Then we delay them. He turned to me once more. If I fall, the bond will guide you. You will know what to do. Ro, but he was already gone, sprinting up the tunnel. his bioluminescent form disappearing into the darkness. I stood alone in the chamber, the hum of the old systems filling the silence. My heart pounded so loudly it drowned everything else out. I looked around desperately for anything I could use, a weapon, a sealant, anything. My gaze landed on the console. It was old, but not dead. Power still flowed faintly through it. I wiped the dust off the screen and activated the emergency override. The interface flickered to life. My training kicked in, fingers flying across controls, sealing doors behind Roe, rerouting air pressure, setting up containment fields. Then I heard it again, the howl. It wasn't outside this time. It was in the tunnels. Roe's voice followed, a roar of defiance and fury that made the ground tremble. The two sounds collided, echoing like thunder through the underground halls. Then, silence. I gripped the edge of the console, my pulse hammering in my ears, and then, from behind me, a soft noise, a heartbeat. I turned slowly. In the corner of the chamber, the air shimmered faintly. Blue light bloomed across the cracked floor, spreading in a pattern that pulsed with life. Something was growing, and I realized with dawning horror and awe that Roe had been right. The birth had already begun. The hum of the old machinery mingled with the pulse of that blue light spreading across the cracked floor. It wasn't just illumination. It was alive. I could feel it through my boots, thrumming like a heartbeat, synced unnaturally with my own. The faint glow outlined strange, circular patterns on the ground, symbols that hadn't been there seconds ago. They shifted and changed as I stared at them, forming spirals, branching veins, and geometric constellations that reminded me of both circuitry and anatomy. I took a step closer, half in awe and half in fear. The air smelled of ozone and warmth, like the aftermath of lightning. The light seemed to breathe, pulsing brighter with every passing second. It was the same rhythm I'd seen under Roe's skin when he first spoke of the litter. "Roe," I whispered, though he wasn't there to hear me. Somewhere above, the battle raged, dull crashes, roars, and the distant rhythmic pounding of claws striking metal. The sound seemed to shake the entire underground chamber. Then, the hum beneath my feet intensified. The light began to swell upward, rising like mist. Small orbs, no larger than fists, started forming out of it, suspended in the air. Each one pulsed with a faint crystalline glow. I stepped back instinctively. "Oh, no," I murmured. "Oh, no, no, no." The orbs multiplied rapidly, hovering above the ground in a cluster of 6. They rotated in slow, deliberate motion, giving off a faint sound, like whispering voices blending together in harmony. The sight was mesmerizing and terrifying. "Those are the offspring," I said aloud, trying to convince myself I was still observing, still scientific. Incubation structures, bioenergy manifestations, not actual life forms. But deep down, I knew I was lying. The whispering grew louder. I couldn't understand the words, but they tugged at something inside my mind, something familiar. I took another step back and bumped into one of the old consoles. The static hum of the decaying equipment answered with a faint spark. The lights flickered, and in that brief flash, I saw my reflection on the screen, only it wasn't my reflection. My eyes glowed faintly gold. I stumbled away, shaking my head. "No, no, no, not me, that's not possible." But it made sense now, didn't it? Roe had said the bond was real, that his species reproduced through genetic and energy merging. I thought it was nonsense, but when I had sealed his wounds, when my blood had mixed with his, he hadn't been speaking metaphorically. The orbs pulsed brighter, and one of them, slowly, almost tenderly, floated closer to me. I froze. The air around it warped, bending the faint dust particles into swirling patterns. It hovered near my chest, pulsing gently. The hum grew louder, deeper, until it felt like it was vibrating inside my bones. "I'm not your parent," I whispered. "I didn't ask for this." The orb brightened, and for a fraction of a second I saw something within it, something moving, a silhouette curled and glowing, its form halfway between creature and light. A small paw pressed against the inner surface, and the energy flared brighter at the contact. My heart stopped. Outside, another crash shook the chamber. The sound of claws scraping against metal echoed down the tunnel again, closer this time. Then came a roar, low and guttural, that I knew instantly wasn't Ro's. They were here. "Ro!" I shouted into the tunnel. My voice bounced back to me, hollow. I turned back toward the orbs. The one nearest me was still pulsing, but now they were all changing, flaring brighter, faster, reacting to the vibrations above. It wasn't random. It was protective. They were afraid. Without thinking, I grabbed the plasma cutter from the nearby table and moved toward the entrance of the chamber. The tunnel beyond was pitch black, but I could see faint flickers of light. Far up the passage, white-blue bursts followed by flashes of orange and red. Ro was fighting. The sound of metal scraping against stone was louder now, echoing closer. I crouched near the tunnel's edge, my pulse racing. Then, from the darkness, something moved. A shadow filled the narrow space, massive, hulking, breathing heavily. For a heartbeat I thought it was Ro, but then I saw the eyes. 4 glowing orbs, but unlike his warm gold, these were sharp, icy blue. The creature stepped forward, lowering its head to fit into the tunnel. It was the size of a horse, its body slick with some kind of liquid that reflected the dim light. Its jaw split open into 4 parts, rows of crystalline fangs shimmering like glass. It stared at me, and then at the chamber behind me, at the orbs. It didn't speak, but I heard it in my head. "The children are not yours." The voice wasn't a sound. It was a thought forced into my mind, sharp and invasive. I gritted my teeth, gripping the plasma cutter. "Yeah, you're not getting them either." The creature's head tilted slightly like it was amused. Then it lunged. I barely dodged the first strike. Its claws sliced through the console where I'd been crouching, shredding it like paper. Sparks erupted, filling the tunnel with smoke and light. I swung the plasma cutter wildly, the blade slicing through part of its foreleg. The smell of burning metal and ozone filled the air. The creature recoiled, letting out a roar that shook the walls. Before it could lunge again, a voice thundered through the chamber. "Enough!" Ro's silhouette appeared at the far end of the tunnel, his entire body blazing with energy. The light rippled through him, painting the walls gold. The invading creature turned its head and hissed. "You betrayed the pack." "I saved the bloodline," Ro growled, his voice low and filled with fury. Their clash was instantaneous. They collided with a force that sent shockwaves through the tunnel, sparks raining from the ceiling. I stumbled back, shielding my face as light and energy exploded between them. The smaller creature was fast, darting around Ro's attacks, its claws slicing at his sides. But Ro was stronger. Each time he struck, the air seemed to warp. I could feel the vibrations in my chest, like being too close to a thunderclap. "Ro!" I shouted. "There's more coming!" He didn't look back. "Protect the young!" The words hit me like a command, not just a suggestion, but something inside the bond, forcing me to obey. My pulse synced with his again. I stumbled backward into the chamber, just as another rumble shook the ground. The orbs were glowing even brighter now, their surfaces cracking like eggshells. I could see movement inside, tiny forms shifting, stretching, trying to emerge. "Oh, God," I whispered. "They're hatching." The first orb split open with a sound like breaking glass. Light spilled out, blinding for a moment. When it faded, something small and shimmering tumbled onto the floor. It looked like a puppy at first glance, but its fur was translucent, pulsing faintly with the same bioluminescent veins as Ro. It had too many eyes, and its breathing was too steady for something so new. It looked up at me and made a soft, high-pitched sound, half whimper, half electric buzz. "Hey," I whispered, kneeling. "It's okay." The moment my hand brushed its head, a jolt of warmth shot through me. Images flashed in my mind. Roe running across red dunes, stars above, the hum of an alien heartbeat syncing with my own. The newborn nuzzled my palm, and behind it, the other orbs began to crack open. 5 more small shapes emerged, each unique. One with streaks of violet in its fur, another with thin, almost crystalline spines along its back. They gathered together instinctively, huddling around me, glowing like a nest of tiny suns. Then the tunnel roared again. I turned just in time to see Roe and the intruder crash through the wall, locked in combat. Stone and debris rained down, cutting across my arm and face. Roe slammed the creature against the far wall, his teeth sinking into its throat. The blue-eyed beast shrieked, energy flaring through its body. Then another voice, a new one, echoed from the tunnel behind it. "You cannot protect them all." 2 more silhouettes appeared. Roe's head snapped toward me. "Take them! The vent behind you, it leads to the old rover bay." "What about you?" I shouted. His voice thundered through the chamber. "Go!" The newborns seemed to understand. They began moving toward the far wall, where a narrow vent shimmered with faint light. I gathered the smallest one in my arms, heart hammering, and crawled toward it. The others followed, their small claws clicking softly on the metal floor. Behind us, the fight raged on. Sparks flew as Roe tore into one of the attackers, but another lunged from the side, slamming into him. The impact sent both of them crashing through another section of wall. Dust filled the air. The chamber shook. Again, the structure groaning under the weight of destruction. I reached the vent and pulled open the hatch. Cold air rushed through. The newborns slipped inside one by one, glowing faintly as they crawled ahead. I turned back one last time. Through the haze, I saw Roe pinned under the massive silver creature. Its claws dug into his chest, glowing with heat. Roe roared, the sound raw and defiant. "Roe!" I screamed. He looked at me, just for a second. There was something calm in his gaze, something final. "Protect them," he said softly. Then the creature drove its claws down. The chamber erupted in light. The blast threw me back into the vent, sealing the hatch behind me. For a long, breathless moment, there was nothing but white. When the light finally faded, the tunnel around me was silent, except for the faint hum of the newborns crawling ahead, their small voices whispering in the dark. I forced myself forward, every muscle shaking, every breath ragged. I didn't look back, not until I felt a small paw press against my hand, warm and alive. When I did glance back through the narrow vent, I saw it, the faintest flicker of gold light, pulsing weakly through the rubble. Roe wasn't gone. Not yet. The tunnel stretched endlessly before me, dark and trembling with each distant explosion from the chamber behind. Dust drifted down in shimmering curtains of red and gold as I crawled on my hands and knees through the narrow passage. The newborns' glow lighting the way. Their faint whimpers echoed softly, blending with the low rumble of collapsing stone above us. I could still feel Roe's last command pounding in my skull. Protect them. It wasn't just a memory. It was a living voice inside me, resonating in my veins like a second heartbeat. Each pulse of that alien bond kept me moving forward, even as pain screamed through my body. The tunnel angled upward suddenly, widening just enough for me to stand. I pulled the smallest pup into my arms. It purred with a faint electric vibration and looked around. We'd reached a maintenance junction, an old rover bay long forgotten beneath the Martian surface. The air here was cold and still, but breathable. The chamber was vast. Rusted rovers, half buried in dust, lined the walls like skeletal remains. Faded logos of the first colonists were still visible beneath layers of time. And beyond them, a massive blast door sealed off the exit to the surface. I staggered toward it, setting the pup down gently. The others followed, padding silently beside me. Their bioluminescence painted the bay in waves of color, blue, gold, and violet, rippling across the walls. For a fleeting moment, despite the chaos behind us, it felt peaceful. Then the floor beneath my feet vibrated. Once, twice. The peace shattered. The newborns froze, their lights dimming instinctively. I turned back toward the tunnel, fear rising like acid in my throat. A low, guttural sound rolled through the metal. Something massive was moving down there. The sound of claws scraping, metal bending, and a faint echo of a growl I recognized. Not Rose. "Run," I whispered, though they probably couldn't understand the word. They didn't move. They stood in a circle around me, fur bristling, small chests heaving, as if they sensed the danger as clearly as I did. Their glow intensified again, synchronized, rhythmic. The tunnel behind us exploded. A spray of debris and dust filled the air as the wall buckled inward. I fell backward, shielding my face. Through the haze, a silhouette appeared, tall, hulking, and alive with silver fire. It stepped into the chamber, its head nearly brushing the ceiling, its blue eyes blazing like cold stars. The Alpha. Even without Rose's memories pressing faintly against my mind, I knew what it was. The leader of the pack, the one that had come to finish what the others started. It scanned the chamber slowly until its gaze locked on me. Its mouth split open, four jaws unfurling like petals. When it spoke, the voice didn't come from its throat, it came from everywhere. "You carry the bond," it said, its tone like metal scraping against stone. "The traitor's seed lies within you. Hand them over, and your death will be swift." I forced myself to stand, heart pounding so hard it hurt. "They're not yours to take," the creature tilted its head. "They are not yours to keep. You are an echo, an accident of flesh. You were never meant to exist beside us. Then maybe it's time your kind learned to share." The creature let out a sound that could have been laughter or contempt. Its claws flexed, slicing into the steel floor. "You think you understand life, human. You think creation is mercy, but you do not know what they are." The air shifted. The newborns huddled closer. The Alpha stepped forward, and as it did, the lights in the chamber began to flicker. Each pulse of its body drained the energy from the old systems, leaving the room darker with every step. "They are not children," it hissed. "They are weapons. They were forged to remake worlds, to consume and rebuild. That was our purpose before we fell." I shook my head. "No, they're alive. They're more than that. They are born of my kind's design. Do you think the traitor changed that?" "Ro wasn't a traitor," I shouted. "He saved them. He saved you!" The creature's growl deepened, the sound shaking the walls. "He defied the order. He created hybrids, impurities, and now the cycle must be cleansed." It lunged. I dove aside just in time, rolling behind a rusted rover. The Alpha's claws tore through the floor where I'd been standing, leaving molten streaks. The newborns scattered, their tiny forms darting across the bay in flashes of light. The Alpha turned toward them. "Run if you wish," it snarled. "The void takes all. Leave them alone!" I screamed, grabbing a metal pipe and slamming it against the rover's emergency ignition. Sparks flew. I swung the pipe again, hitting the rusted valve until a hiss of gas escaped. Then I ignited it with my plasma cutter. The explosion wasn't massive, but it was enough. The shockwave threw the Alpha off balance, fire washing across its silver hide. It roared in fury, stumbling backward. I didn't stop to think. I sprinted to the nearest control console and slammed the manual override. The blast doors groaned, but started to open, revealing the harsh red light of dawn spilling through the crack. Thin tendrils of atmosphere swirled in. "Go!" I shouted at the newborns. "Outside!" They hesitated for a moment, then ran. One by one, they darted through the widening gap, their glowing bodies vanishing into the Martian light. The Alpha saw them and roared. "You would doom this world for them?" I turned back, panting, gripping the plasma cutter so tight my knuckles ached. "This world's already dead," I said. "They're its only chance." It lunged again. I met it halfway. The impact threw me across the floor. My ribs screamed as I hit the wall. The cutter flew from my hand, clattering out of reach. The Alpha towered over me, its claws glowing white-hot. "You are nothing," it whispered, a spark pretending to be flame. I braced for the killing blow. When the air behind it shimmered, a shape burst through the dust. Massive, golden, burning with fury. "Ro," He crashed into the Alpha like a meteor, driving it back with sheer force. The impact sent both of them tumbling across the chamber, tearing through the metal floor. The ground cracked open beneath their weight, fire and dust rising in waves. I stared in disbelief. "Ro, you're alive!" He didn't answer. His body was torn and burned, his once luminous fur dimmed in patches, but his eyes still blazed with purpose. He slammed the Alpha into the wall, claws tearing into its throat. "You will not take them," Ro growled. The Alpha snarled back. "You are already dying. Your blood stains this planet. You cannot stop what has begun." Ro's voice was low, almost gentle. "I don't need to stop it. I only need to delay it." He turned his head toward me. "Human," he said, "you must leave now." "No," I said, stumbling forward. "Not without you." His eyes met mine, softening for the briefest moment. "The young will not survive without you. You are their bridge to life." The Alpha twisted suddenly, driving its claws deep into Ro's side. The sound that followed was a mixture of pain and rage that rattled the chamber. Ro responded in kind, his body blazing so bright it hurt to look at. The two of them became light and shadow locked in violent orbit, energy pulsing outward in waves that cracked the ground. I could barely stand. My suit alarms screamed warnings about radiation pressure, oxygen loss, all irrelevant compared to the sight before me. "Ro!" I shouted, but my voice was swallowed by the roar of colliding forces. The blast doors groaned wider. The newborn's cries echoed faintly from outside, urging me to move, but I couldn't. Not yet. I couldn't leave him. Then, through the blinding chaos, I saw Ro's gaze find mine again. He mouthed one word: "Now." The light exploded, a blinding surge of gold filled the chamber, followed by silence so deep it felt like the planet had stopped breathing. I was thrown backward out through the blast doors, tumbling into the dust. The red horizon tilted around me, the sun breaking over the dunes. When I opened my eyes, everything was quiet. The rover bay was gone, reduced to a crater of glowing glass and twisted metal. There was no sign of the Alpha, no sign of Ro, just the faint shimmer of heat rising from the ground. Then I heard it, a soft whimper. I turned. The newborn stood on the ridge, their eyes glowing faintly in the light of the dawn. They were watching me, tails low, their tiny bodies trembling. The smallest one limped toward me, its fur flickering gold. "Hey," I said hoarsely, falling to my knees, "you made it." It looked up at me, and for the briefest instant, I saw Ro's eyes reflected in its own. The pup pressed its head against my hand. The others gathered around, curling up beside me in the dust. The rising sun caught their translucent fur, scattering the light into colors Mars had never seen. Blue and gold and soft violet, hues of life where there had only ever been red and death. And in that moment I understood. Ro hadn't just died protecting them. He had become part of them. His essence lived on, woven into their energy, their light, their hearts. The wind picked up, carrying fine red dust across the dunes. In the distance, I saw flashes of light, the first signals from the colony dome, likely detecting the explosion. They'd come searching soon. I looked down at the tiny creatures nestled against me. "Looks like it's just us now," I whispered. "Guess I'm a dad." One of them yawned, a small puff of bioluminescent mist curling from its mouth. Another wagged its tail, tentative, clumsy, but undeniably joyful. I smiled through tears. "Yeah," I said softly. "You're gonna change everything, aren't you?" The smallest one looked up, its golden eyes locking on mine. For a second, I could have sworn I heard Ro's voice again. Faint, warm, proud. "You kept them safe," the pup barked once, high-pitched and musical. Then the others joined in, their voices blending into a chorus that echoed across the empty Martian plains, a sound of new life on a dead world. As the sun climbed higher, I stood, the newborns gathering around me. Together, We began walking toward the horizon, leaving the crater behind. The wind howled faintly, carrying Rose's last words through the thin air. "Prepare, human. The future has begun."